magic, mayhem, and terror await you all. Hello and welcome to the Friday Fantasy Show from the Bottled Imp, exploring the realms of fantasy. My name is Ken Boyter and today we are taking a look at this collection of fantasy short stories. It's called Exterus, if that's how you pronounce it, and it is edited by Owen Wears. He is also one of the authors, and he very kindly sent the Bottled Imp this copy to review. Now on here, I've noticed it says Pulp, Fantasy, Horror, and the Bizarre. Well, let's see if it does indeed contain all of those. Exterus. Yes, exactly what is this all about? As I say, it is a collection of fantasy, horror, bizarre and pulp fiction type stories, and there's 7 stories altogether, or is it 8? Can't remember. I think there's 7 actually, and there's one classic story that is by Clark Ashton Smith. Now he was a pulp fiction writer back in the 1920s and 30s, and he wrote for magazines, the sort of pulp magazines at the time, Weird Tales for example, and I think Outstanding Stories or Amazing Stories, one of those. And so he was along the lines of H.P. Lovecraft, and because of copyright, his stories are now becoming available in the public domain, and so these people have put that in this collection. And I can understand why they've done that, because when I was thinking about short stories, yes, I've not read that many short stories that are fantasy. Yes, I've read lots of novels, but not, and seen obviously films and played lots of board games that are fantasy, but not really delved into the short story genre. We've done 1 or 2 maybe during my time here at the Bottled Imp. And so I'm curious to know a bit more about the short story format and how it kind of fits in with the fantasy genre. And it fits in very well, as it turns out. There are 7 original stories, and what I found myself doing is I had to remind myself about the pulp fiction bit of this, the pulp fantasy, because they to me were the sort of stories that are, that are a little bit over the top, a little bit unreal, if you can say that for a fantasy story, where some of them are like broad brushstrokes as opposed to looking at characterization and the fine details of a plot. So once that was in the forefront of my mind, I actually really started to enjoy these, and I think that's what I've discovered recently anyway, that sometimes your expectations of something don't quite meet of what the actual authors are trying to do. So that said, I felt that they tackled each story very, very well in terms of fitting it into the pulp, fantasy, horror and the bizarre. And again, with a short story collection, it's like, well, they've got to be different stories, but yet they've all got to somehow be of a cohesive, if I can say it, cohesive manner. And they've done a very good job with that. Yes, there are lots of varying different plots. There are lots of varying different styles. So, for example, you're going to get, a big epic story. There's one story where it basically is a viewpoint of a battle that takes place with vast swathes of armies, and it kind of reminded me of Lord of the Rings. The big battle sequences where things just happen. There's lots of action. There's lots of obviously killing. And it's just one big sort of overview. It felt like I was looking down on this big raging battle. And then you get a really minute story, such as Nan Dostois, I think that's how you pronounce it, Don'ts, I think, where it's about this sort of ancient, wizened lady who has this sort of ancient knowledge, and she, lives in a little quirky house in the middle of the forest, and she's very in touch with nature. And that was a very focused story, just really about her and the characterization of this old woman and her knowledge and the way that she interacts with nature. So there's lots of different styles. There's sword and sorcery in here as well, And there's a very bizarre one as well, which I don't really want to give away because it's a bit of a twist. There's not many sort of twist endings in this short story collection, which is a good thing. But there is in this horror one. It's kind of a horror type bizarre as well. And so I thought they did a really good job of making each story, you could feel like they each belonged to the collection, yet they were varied enough to keep your attention. I didn't feel like I was reading a repeat story, if you like. And there are various themes as well. Obviously that helps if you've got different themes. I don't think really any of the short stories touched on the same theme. So you have the theme of, there was one was about kind of lust and denial, about you're finding somebody attractive, yet the situation doesn't necessarily warrant you fulfilling that lust of yours, even though it's wanted. And so I felt that was quite a good theme to explore. There was also loneliness and betrayal, all wrapped up in one story, which was the opening story, Journeyman in Grey. And I thought they did a very good job of conveying that, if he's a journeyman, he's a messenger, and his basically job is to carry messages through from land to land, and so obviously that's going to be a very lonely profession, and so you're going to have to be a type of person that doesn't mind that actually probably prefers your own company, and therefore you start to build up, if you're going to have that life, you would start to build up a kind of sort of healthy mistrust of people that you meet, and therefore there are going to be people that are going to want to betray you. So I felt that was a good opening story as well. Again, that was focusing on characterization. I think that was a good choice to open up with. You've also got the nature of death, which was in a story, I think you pronounce it Scion, 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 not really sure, sorry. And that was by the editor, G. Owen Wears. And again, I felt that was varied enough in that story. So there was that sort of looking at facing your death. Maybe it's your duty, maybe there's no other option, and so how are you going to approach death? And then we had the nature of pure evil with the Clark Ashton Smith story, and that looks at it's like an ancient what happens in that one? Yeah, it's an ancient. I'm trying to describe it, where they're not quite archaeologists, but they're trying to find this ancient knowledge. One's a necromancer, I think, and so they're trying to find this ancient knowledge, and they've got lots of knowledge, they've got lots of power, they're used to connecting with spirits and the undead and all the kind of macabre of life, and yet they stumble across something. There's a kind of mystery, a puzzle to solve, and they manage to connect with this. I don't want to give too much away, but in a way they didn't really envisaged. So therefore they have to confront this pure evil, and then again it's how do you deal with that? How do you actually confront it? Do you accept it? Do you try and run away from it? Do you just accept what your fate is going to be? So there was lots of variations on different themes, which was great, because I didn't feel like I was reading a story that had already dealt with the nature of war or the nature of death. So I thought that was very cleverly done. All the plots, as I say, they did vary. There was some very epic, high fantasy in there. There was sword and sorcery type tales. And as I say, there was very more human-esque type, smaller tales in there as well. So I thought they did well with varying the plots. I like the fact that with the short stories, every author did a very good job in sort of taking a glimpse into that world. I felt that they were fully rounded worlds and characters where they had an existence before the short story, before the glimpse of what the reader reads and learns. And I felt like the stories could continue afterwards. So it felt like I was, if that's like a timeline that, we were just getting a glimpse of their lives, I felt that, yes, I could imagine that they existed before the short story and after, if you see what I mean. I think that's very important to do that, because you want believability even in short stories. And some might say that it's harder to do that in short stories because you've only got a limited amount of words to actually convey that and make your world and make your characters believable. I thought the quality of writing was excellent. I thought it was very well executed, every single story. And yes, there were different styles, obviously, because it's different authors, but they were all of a good quality. There wasn't a weak one where I thought, nah, okay, you know, that one, they could have left that out. No, I felt every single story was good quality. And I guess more importantly, I enjoyed every single story because, you know, sometimes like when you listen to music and you might listen to an album and you really like maybe 4 or 5 tracks, but you don't like 3 or 4 of them. With this one, I did enjoy every single one. And I think that did initially come down to my attitude towards this because of this pulp fantasy. Because if you go in thinking this is going to be realistic, this is going to be very gritty or whatever, then you're going to be sort of disappointed. So if you go in with a bit of an open mind and saying, okay, this is kind of like a box of chocolates, to quote Forrest Gump, where it's like, oh, I wonder what's going to happen next, and you kind of just let it wash over you. That's the way to approach it. So I did find myself kind of enjoying the stories. I did prefer a few to some others. There was a few of my favourites. The Journeyman in Grey, which was the opening story, I felt that was very strong, and I connected instantly with that. I wanted to know more about the character. I wanted to know his past and his future. I wanted to know his thoughts on things. You know, I wanted to travel more with him. So it'd be nice if there was a novel. You know, so I could then visit his world again and what he gets up to. And my absolute favourite was the Nan Donce, if that's how you pronounce it, I'm really sorry. The full title is actually Nan Donce, the Black Poplar. And I really like that because I do like the sort of archetype of a wise person that is in tune with nature, that has this higher wisdom, that seems to be able to tune into the birds and the bees and just live amongst the greenery and the forests, and they know about all the leaves, and they're a healer. I like that sort of aspect. I like that characterization, and this didn't disappoint. It wasn't a cliche character. The Nan was individual enough to make it a believable character in her own right, and I liked her feistiness. I liked her sort of little small journey that she goes through. Really strong story for me. That was my personal favourite. I liked that there was a good 3 or 4 that I just went, yeah, these are really, really excellent, strong stories. There was a few that I was like, okay, that's not really my cup of tea, but I could recognise that it was a good, strong story. There was good writing. It was of quality, and so that's why I say there isn't an actual weak story in this, but there are some. I think most people are going to be like that. There are going to be some that are more your cup of tea than others. So overall, I thought this was an excellent collection. I would thoroughly recommend it, actually, and I didn't know what to expect because it's like, well, this is a short story collection. Are they going to vary in quality? What's the editing going to be like? And I thought it was first rate on all accounts. I really, really enjoyed this. So I would recommend Exodus. Thank you so much for watching. Yes, volume 1. I hope there's volume 2. I think there is. I think it's either just been printed or it's on its way to being printed. Exterus, excellent short story collection. One other thing I will briefly mention is each story is topped with a beautiful ink illustration. Really like the illustrations. Just adds that extra bit of to it. What a good book. And they are by Android Jones. What we'll do is we'll probably scan in some of these illustrations so you can see these. There we are. No, maybe we won't. Okay. Oh well, that's the end of that then. Thank you so much for watching. We have got lots of other reviews on our channel, so please do check them out. But remember, fellow imps, remember to keep it unreal. Until the next time, bye.